this poet has so much just authenticity and such a unique voice and an ability to express things that are really hard to talk about. And of course, I personally, obviously, I'm white as hell. I don't understand what it's like to be Black. I don't understand what it's like to live through what you've lived through. And we'll get into a little bit more of that later. But I think from generally what I understand, it's pretty not frowned upon, but it's hard in the Black community as a Black man to talk about your emotions and to
Right.
talk about how you feel, and especially doing poetry. So I was really curious how you came to find that that was your medium, and how what made you say, I don't care what other people think, and just go
So
for it.
one, I don't know if it's my medium, right? I still don't consider myself a poet. And in regards to being able to express emotions through the poem, so one thing I know, like you said, you're a white female, that some of the stories that I may perform in poetry, you may not automatically connect without the emotions. But one of the things that I know about performance and creativity, that emotions, we always connect to emotions, right? So if you can convey the right emotions in the right place that merges the words, regardless of the race, the language, or whatever the individual's background, the emotions will communicate what otherwise the individual may miss, right? And so what she says, she loves me, for all of my work, I'm able to transport myself back to the moment that I created. I may not always be able to tell you why that poem was created, but I tend to try to internalize the pain, not only of the woman, but also of the man whose voice is often silenced and overshadowed because of the damage that he's done. And so we never get to fully understand how he became who he became to be such a villain in that poem. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes
Yeah, no, and that's because I won't lie, I did like a super deep dive after I emailed you and I went through all that stuff, and I watched like a bunch of your videos, a bunch of your old skits and things like that. And what I really love is the nuance you bring to what you've been through, and
sense.
how nothing is black and white and nothing is all good or all bad. People come to the choices they come to because of different life experiences, and we can't really judge someone's past ever because we haven't lived it ourselves. So how could we know? Um, so I love that so much.
Nothing is one of the things that we do. That's one of the things that we're taught because it adds a title. And sometimes the judgment is wrong, right? And like you said, and some you have to be able to put your feet in somebody else's shoes, but you don't necessarily have to have lived through the experience to understand the impact that it has. So I
Mhm.
always try to encourage audiences to be open to somebody else's experience, because you may not have experienced it directly, but domestic violence, if you live on the street with 10 houses, chances are two of those houses has been impacted by domestic violence, right? Somebody in your community right now may be experiencing domestic violence as we have in this conversation. And so I internalize not only from personal experiences, but from stories like that you may share with me from the newspaper. I can see a flower, but it can trigger something dark, right? And I generally run with it. So when I did a lot of my earlier work, including She Says She Loves Me, was freestyle. I don't consider myself a poet. And if you've seen any of the interviews, I was invited to a poetry event and I was talking trash about poets because they was like, lay you across the moon and all that old stuff, right? And I just couldn't connect to that because I come from a darker background. And so the host, because we was great friends, called me on the stage, put me on the spot, and introduced me as a poet. And I had to make up something. And so that initially how She Says She Loves Me came about. But also I had to go back and put the statistics on it, right? Because in the beginning, when I was doing that poem, women were looking at me like they wanted to beat the brakes off of me because it just ended. She says she loves me. And they was like, you beating women, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
right. So some
It's
women,
you're supposed to analyze it and get from that's the whole point. Yeah. Kind of have to spell it out for some people sometimes. Yeah.
right. And so, because I know some people that interviewed me in the past did research to find out if I killed a woman from domestic violence. Yeah, that's what some people, interviewers, did, because they just could not believe that I could create that poem without having physically done